I'm Kee Thuan Chye. I wrote the play. I'm also producing and directing it.
Hi, I'm Qahar Aqilah. I'm one of the actors in the play.
And I'm Alfred Loh. I'm one of the actors in the play.
Alright, let's get this started. Let's talk about what Swordfish and Concubine is about. Like, what's the story behind it?
Well, first of all, it was it adapts two stories from Sejarah Melayu, but these stories are actually not interrelated. What I've done is I've tried to forge a connection between the two.
Nah.
One of the stories is of the swordfish attack on Singapura and about a boy who saves the land and then is unduly rewarded for it. And the other story is about the Sultan's favorite concubine who is sentenced to death by impalement or hukuman sula for something that she did not do.
Yeah.
So, but it's not a retelling because what I've done is I've played with the two stories, and on top of that, I put in the central concern of the play, which is the covenant that is made by Sri Tribhuwana and Demang Lebar Daun. It's all in the Sejarah Melayu, and in it, the covenant says that rulers expect 100% loyalty from their subjects, but in return they cannot shame any of the subjects publicly, or it will bring about the destruction of the kingdom, which I think to be a very fascinating concept, and I think it is very much at the core of the mindset that we still have today. If you look around, and the things that we do. So this play is actually not about the past, it's about the present.
Right. So were you guys familiar with the Sejarah Melayu stories before getting the script?
Only bits and pieces from school.
Right.
For me. Yeah.
Did you guys have to do any prior reading of that before? Like, was that required or?
No, I mean naturally, once you face with things that you sort of like, oh okay, I'm not sure about this, then you start researching, like you just try to find whatever you can find.
I was a bit lucky when I was growing up. I had this, I don't know if anyone else had it, but there was this 12 picture book series about as far back as Sejarah Melayu and as modern pula as like 18th century. So there was the guy in Pahang, all these different historical figures and Tua and Jebat too at that time, but also the better documented ones.
Right.
The ones that fought against the Dutch, the ones that fought against the British. So
It's a historical children's book.
It's a children's book. It's a picture book about all the, and in a sense, it's kind of like a kid's version of Sejarah Melayu lah, somewhat. But then when you go to school and you read about Sejarah Melayu and you read the official versions about the in recorded history, it'll never say fled from here to here, it'll say explored from here to here, but the truth is empires were always shifting and all that, so you get a picture of that lah.
Yeah, and also there was much less violence, I guess, in the children's book. Probably, or is that impalement in those colors?
Not so much impalement, but there was violence lah. There was like they struggled against here, but they always paint it as fighting for liberation against oppression.
I think the impalement story is probably not as well known, but the boy who saved Singapura from the swordfish attack, I think a lot of people know about that story. And in fact, it's so timeless that anybody can relate to it. Even that kind of thing can work in an office context.
Right, okay.
Right? If you come up with a brilliant idea, people around you feel threatened, and then something happens to you.
Yeah. I guess my next question is about how did you come to adapt a play on Sejarah Melayu stories? Were you always a fan of the Ikan Todak stories, or did you stumble upon it and decided this is a good core piece for a script?
Well, you see, to me, the Sejarah Melayu is a very insightful collection of the genealogy of the Malay rulers.
Right.
But more than that, it's part history and part legend, and they have a lot of things to tell us about our past. To me, I consider as a Malaysian, sejarah Melayu to be part of my heritage. And there are many stories there that are very fascinating, which we don't delve into enough. We need to look at these, what we have, our own cultural legacy, and use them in theatre or in any other kind of arts.
Right. This is not the first time that Swordfish Concubine is staged. It's the first time in Malaysia. So last time you staged in Singapore, if I'm not mistaken, 2011.
Yeah, it's the first time in the original English language in Malaysia.
Right.
In December, Loh Kok Man staged a fabulous Mandarin translation of it.
Okay.
Yeah. But the very first time it premiered was in Singapore in 2008. And then it was done again in Singapore in 2011.
I see. Right. So what took so long for you to readapt it into the English language here in Malaysia?
It was originally written in the English language.
Right.
In 2008, the version was in English in Singapore.
Yeah.
In fact, when I first wrote it, I offered it to a local director.
I see.
I wanted it to be done here because it's a play for Malaysians. And this local director, I told him he had first option. He read it, he said he loved it, he wanted to do it. But then he said he had to look into the logistical aspect of it.
What does that mean? It's logistical.
I don't know how far I can be
it's up to you.
explicit about this.
Right.
Because it might be a bit risky to say so.
Okay.
But he probably found it that logistically it would be a bit challenging. So in the end, he decided not to do it. So I offered it then to Ivan Heng, one of the leading directors in Singapore. He read it, he said, oh, this is a story about us. So that's how it got to be done in Singapore.
I see.
But of course, this is actually a story about us Malaysians, really, and about Malaysia. And it was always written in. But what I have to say is that after each staging, I have revised the play significantly. It has undergone so much revising that what you saw in 2008 is quite different from the current version. I would say maybe about 50%.
Okay.
Yeah, because for me, the play is always a living organism.
Right.
So I keep revising it with the hope of improving it each time. Even after the Mandarin translation was done in December,
there were more revisions
I revised
after.
it. Yeah, so it's also quite different from that one.
Okay. So Swordfish Concubine has a huge cast, and there's music involved and choreography too. So this question is for the actors. So far, what has been the most challenging aspect of getting ready for the play, basically?
Kee Thuan Chye.
Yeah, I know that. I can sense that. Especially coming from Alfred Loh.
Most challenging aspect of getting ready, I think for me it really is working with the different blend of cast, because for a large part we've all worked together. Most of us, I'd say 80% of us have all worked together with each other in some capacity or another. But I think this is the first time we're all working together in this, and you start to observe everyone has a different style. Because the play is quite physical in some parts, everyone kind of has different degrees of physical vocabulary.
Right.
And even with the way the play is shaped, the choices that each actor makes for their characters is different. Like you would watch certain scenes and you'd be like, oh, that's very interesting. I wouldn't have made that choice. So it's digesting that and processing that as an actor, and how that informs you then of your own choices of your characters. That's been just challenging to navigate around, because it's not so much dependent on you and the text, but in this case, I think for me it's really been an issue of a matter of how then do we deal and adapt, because you can go in very strongly with a certain choice that you feel very strongly for, but because it's not universal or everyone's thinking isn't on the same page, then you then have to adapt yourself to sell what the other actors are offering. Because if you're stuck in your, oh no, I think this should be this, I think this should be this way, then somehow things just don't work. And yeah.
But that's the case in almost every production.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Qahar?
Everything. No.
Everything's been a mess.
No. Okay, let me qualify that. I think, everything has its own good. I call it good struggles, lah. It's like I've never been this active and healthy. All the dancing and then the heightened usage of the voice with the singing and the calling and the shouting. They're all good struggles. Because I seldom do those, unless I'm in a karaoke room. And then that's another story for another time.
We'll have another episode just for class karaoke sessions.
Kapu karaoke.
I know, right? It's a good ring to it. Anyway, even for the acting part, I find that Thuan Chye's writing is so straightforward that it presents its own challenges. Like with my previous production, a lot of it is underneath the surface. Yeah, you have to be clear with what's underneath the surface for the surface choices to emerge, and to be clear what you're playing. But with Thuan Chye's writing and directing, it's very straightforward, and the challenge is to just simply rise to the occasion of the drama. Yeah, and I think so it's been good. It's like, oh my god, it's like it's contemporary work, words and usage of words and whatnot, but it does have the tinge of like the old world heightened language, It's like harking back to the days when I was a member of Shakespeare Demystified. Yeah, and I was like, oh wow. There's the moments when when you flow into it, it's like it's really beyond everyday. In a very direct kind of way. All plays will take you to that place, but with this piece, it's like no bullshit lah.
On the nose.
No bullshit.
No bullshit lah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to the writing process. So, what was the mindset behind making it musical and choreographed into dance? Like, was there a specific intention as to why it has to be that way?
Well, my idea of doing theatre is presenting something that is theatrical. So with as many elements you can draw from as possible. So this play is a very eclectic play, and it draws influences from here, there, and everywhere, from east and west, from bangsawan to Brecht, from Zapin to hip hop. So even when I first wrote the play way back when, and I've lived with the play for about 17-18 years, I already had this one sequence called Gamelan Rap from way back then, and it stayed all this time. That is one sequence that I have never touched, in the sense of not having revised it significantly. So so the idea is to present something that is playful, but at the same time serious. Because if you want to bring across something that's serious, you also need to do it in an entertaining way. That's how I feel. So that's and also in a theatrical way. So I bring in all these elements. So there's singing, there's dance, there's
rap,
but there is silat. There's a cast of 12 playing a cast of thousands, and there is gamelan meeting hip hop. But of course, it doesn't mean that it's just a matter of simply taking these elements and putting them all together. Of course, there's a reason for doing that. Yeah.
So when you say cast of thousands, do you